Owen made the smartest investment decision of his life the same year he lost his job. He didn't know that yet. Back then, he had 3 reasonable paths in front of him, each backed by solid logic. As long as the economy stayed calm and the paycheck kept landing on time, there was almost no way to tell which one was actually better. Then a bad year showed up. One version of Owen owned a house but couldn't cover the repair bill. Another had a serious pile of money in his brokerage account and had to sell some of it while the market was falling. A third had earned less overall. But he didn't have to take the first job offer that came along. The real difference wasn't how much their money had grown. It was how many options they still had once life fell apart. Let's rewind. Owen is 34, works as a project manager at a mid-sized architecture firm in Denver, and earns $84,000 a year. No consumer debt, car paid off. He's been saving steadily for years, and now there's $76,000 sitting in his account, the highest balance he's ever seen, which, oddly enough, is starting to bother him. Everywhere he looks, someone's telling him cash is losing value, that waiting is expensive, that real wealth gets built by putting money to work. So he's weighing 3 moves: buy a rental property, put most of it in the stock market, or invest part and keep the rest close at hand. At first glance, that third option looks like the weakest one. There's not much to show for it. The first Owen finds a small 2-bedroom in a quiet part of town for $270,000. Nothing fancy. The roof was redone a few years back. The kitchen cabinets have seen better days, but tenants aren't hard to find in this neighborhood. He puts down $54,000. Inspection, insurance, closing costs, and a handful of small repairs eat up another $9,000. That leaves him with $13,000 in reach. Rent covers the mortgage, taxes, and insurance, with a little left over most months. Nothing spectacular, which is fine, because that's not what he's after. He wants something slow and dependable, not a headline. His first tenant is Maria, a nurse. She pays on time, rarely calls, once about a broken cabinet hinge, once about a gate that wouldn't latch. The first year passes quietly. The property gains a bit of value. Every mortgage payment chips away at the debt. Every so often, driving home from work, he passes that street. The building isn't much to look at. It's his, though, and that feels more real than any number on a screen. The second Owen keeps it simple. He leaves $16,000 in his account and puts the remaining $60,000 into a broad index fund with $500 in automatic monthly contributions. Then he moves on with his life. No house hunting, no tenant screening, no waiting around for a plumber. He checks the account once or twice a month. Sometimes it's up, sometimes down, rarely by enough to actually feel it day to day. He knows the math is sound. But knowing a decision is correct and feeling correct about it aren't the same thing. A coworker mentions a tech stock that doubled overnight. A friend is planning early retirement off dividend income. Someone else just bought a house and won't stop talking about how fast prices went up. Owen glances at his own account, sees a number, closes the app. He doesn't change strategy, but every now and then, he can't shake the feeling that he's doing something painfully ordinary. The third Owen puts $34,000 into the same index fund, parks $26,000 in a low-risk savings account, and keeps $16,000 somewhere he can grab instantly. His monthly contribution, $350. When he explains this to a friend, the reaction isn't encouraging. Why are you letting that much just sit there? He doesn't really have a great answer, just that it makes him feel steadier. For the first 2 years, that choice looks expensive. The market climbs, and the Owen who went all in watches his portfolio outpace this one. Home prices climb too, and the Owen with the rental sees his equity swell. Meanwhile, this Owen just watches opportunities drift further away. A place he'd looked at earlier is suddenly out of reach. He starts wondering if he's being careful or just scared. That sense of security isn't free. He's paying for it with a lower expected return. Then, in February of year 3, a meeting invite shows up from his manager. Subject line: Team Update. It lasts 11 minutes. The firm lost its biggest client. His department is getting cut. His role ends at the end of the month. He gets a small severance. His manager tells him it has nothing to do with performance. He doesn't panic on the drive home. Solid resume, good references, He figures he'll land something in a few weeks. 6 weeks later, still nothing. One role gets canceled mid-interview. A company offers well below his old salary. Another wants a long unpaid trial project and never calls back once it's done. By June, he's gone 4 months without a paycheck. Same person, same skills, same job market. But the investment decision he made earlier turns this one problem into 3 different shapes. When Owen the homeowner loses his job, he's got about $16,000 in cash. His own bills keep coming. So does the mortgage on the rental. In March, Maria tells him she's moving to another city to care for her mother. Proper notice, place left spotless. The problem isn't the tenant, it's the timing. He lists the unit right away. 2 promising applicants fall through. One backs out at the last minute. The other can't verify income. The place sits empty for 7 weeks. Around the same time, a bad storm exposes a leak in the back corner of the roof. Repair cost, $4,900. On its own, that bill wouldn't sink him. Landing in the same month as the mortgage, his own rent, and no income, that's a different story. By August, his cash reserve is nearly gone. On paper, he's richer than the day he bought the place. That wealth is locked inside the walls, though. It doesn't buy groceries, it doesn't pay bills. He considers selling, but a quick sale means a lower price, and with no steady income, refinancing isn't easy either. Some expenses go on a credit card. He pulls early from an old retirement account. He takes on a low-paying evening gig just to keep the numbers from going negative. He keeps the house. Years from now, that will probably look like the right call. But this year, the property stopped being something that supported his life. His life started bending around keeping the property afloat. The market-only Owen has $16,000 in cash. The first few months feel safe. His portfolio had been climbing for 2 years straight. Then the market drops. Within a few months, it's down about 23% from its peak. He knows selling during a downturn will hurt his long-term returns. Rent Day doesn't care what he knows. He pauses the automatic contributions first, then starts draining his cash reserve. By month 5, it's down to 2 options: take a lower-paying job offer or sell part of the portfolio. He sells. The transaction takes seconds. Having access to the money is exactly what saves him, and exactly what locks in part of the loss. That's the strange thing about liquid investments. Easy to reach when you need it, just as easy to break when you're scared. He doesn't liquidate everything, doesn't abandon the market. He sells just enough to cover a few months of expenses. But compounding won't march on uninterrupted the way the calculator promised, because that calculator assumed he'd never need the money early. Life made no such promise. He loses the same job. His investments drop in the same market. The difference, outside the market, he's got enough to cover his basics for a long stretch. He pauses his monthly contributions but doesn't touch the portfolio. Nothing dramatic happens at first. The savings account just quietly shrinks, month by month. From the outside, it looks calm. It doesn't feel that way from the inside. He watches 2 years of cushion shrink a little every month. Thinks about the money he didn't invest while home prices kept climbing. Does the math on what he'll miss if the market bounces back before he's reinvested. In month 4, a job offer comes in. Decent pay, but it feels like a step backward in his career. Turn it down, and he keeps eating into savings. 2 nights of bad sleep later, he says no anyway. There's no guarantee that's the right call. Flexibility doesn't buy fearlessness. It buys a little more room to make a decision that might turn out wrong. He picks up freelance work, learns a piece of software that keeps showing up in job postings, stays in touch with former coworkers. In September, a new position comes through. Slightly better pay than before, 3 remote days a week. His emergency fund took a real hit. His portfolio's still below its old peak. If he'd gone all in 2 years earlier, his net worth would probably be higher right now. He's not the one who ends up with the most money. He's just the one who got to make the fewest decisions he didn't want to make. The homeowner Owen still owns the rental. New tenant in place. Rents crept up over time. The mortgage balance is way down. The neighborhood's appreciated. Looking at it today, the decision looks like a clear win. But that final number doesn't show what the bad year cost. The taxes and penalties on that early retirement withdrawal. The slow crawl out of credit card debt. The year the evening job delayed his return to his actual career. The property built wealth. It also pulled money away from anywhere else he could have put it for a few years. The market-only Owen recovered too. Once he landed the new job, the automatic contributions started again. The market eventually passed its old high, and the shares he kept riding grew right along with it. The shares he sold under pressure didn't get to join that recovery. He sometimes runs the numbers on what they'd be worth now, knowing full well it changes nothing. He checks anyway, once in a while. The flexible Owen doesn't end up with the highest net worth 9 years out. The money he kept out of the market earned less during the good years. Some opportunities really did pass him by. He could have bought earlier, could have built a bigger portfolio. But that reserve bought him time during the bad year. Time to turn down the low-paying offer. Time to avoid selling into a falling market. Time to choose his next career move based on more than next month's bills. The better job he eventually landed closed part of the wealth gap in the years that followed. Cash didn't do that by itself. It just bought him enough time to make a better call. It would be easy to line up 3 balances and pick the biggest one. But there isn't a clean winner here. The rental gave Owen leverage and long-term equity in exchange for a slice of his liquidity and freedom to move. The market gave him diversification and quick access, but that same easy access made it just as easy to disrupt his plan the moment he actually needed the money. The cash reserve never made him richer. It slowed him down noticeably during the good years, but it kept him from making every decision under financial pressure during the bad one. Which means the best investment isn't just the one with the highest expected return. It's the one that fits the life of the person holding it. Someone with unpredictable income doesn't need the same liquidity as someone with a stable salary. A landlord who's good with tenants and repairs isn't making the same investment as someone who dreads both. 2 people can own the identical index fund and still have a completely different experience of it, depending on whether a 30% drop keeps them up at night or not. Same asset, different reality. Before your next investment decision, don't just run the best-case numbers. Picture the year your income drops, the market falls, and an unexpected bill lands all at once. And ask yourself, not which one pays off if everything goes right, but which one can I still hold on to if nothing does? Good years make almost any decision look smart. It's the bad one that tells you whether it was ever actually right for you. In the sketchbook economy, every page leads to another. Subscribe and turn the page with me.